So many of us use internet-based phone calls, or VoIP, every single day, whether it's for work or just catching up. It's cheap, it's super flexible, but it also brings up a really important question about something we just assume is safe: our privacy.
So let's just cut to the chase and ask it directly. When you're on a VoIP call, maybe discussing some sensitive business info or something personal, is that conversation actually secure? Or are you kind of just broadcasting it out there on the open internet for anyone with the right know-how to grab?
Okay, now hold on, because this is where things get really, really weird. I want you to look at this quote from someone on Reddit. Their provider told them it's best practice to leave their service unencrypted. I mean, why on earth would anyone ever say less security is a good thing? This puzzle is exactly what we're going to unravel today.
So to get to the bottom of that frankly bizarre piece of advice, we first need to understand the fundamental trade-off that's right at the heart of VoIP. It's really that classic story of convenience versus security, and it's all happening on a network that was never really built for this kind of thing. So what is VoIP really? Well, at its simplest, it just takes your voice, chops it up into digital data packets, and zips it across the internet, pretty much like an email or a website. And that's exactly why it's so cheap and flexible. It lets businesses set up these big, complex phone systems and makes it super easy to support remote workers.
But, and this is a big but, here's the catch. All that convenience means your private conversations are cruising along the public internet. This is a massive, wide-open network that, wasn't originally designed for the kind of secure, real-time communication a phone call needs. And that opens up your voice data to a whole world of digital dangers that old-school landlines just never had to worry about.
And that vulnerability, well, it swings the door wide open for some very real threats. The reason that providers' advice about skipping encryption is so alarming is because of all the different ways an unencrypted call can be attacked. Once you see these, you'll get why security is so important. Okay, so these threats basically fall into three big buckets. First, you've got attacks on confidentiality. Think eavesdropping, someone secretly listening in. Second, there are attacks on availability, which can totally shut down your phones. And third, you have attacks on integrity, where criminals mess with the system to make a quick buck.
Now, to really get how things can go wrong, let's first look at how a call is supposed to work. What you're seeing here is the Session Initiation Protocol, or SIP, doing its thing. The phone on the left, Tesla, sends out an invite. Over on the right, Marconi says ringing, and then 200 OK to pick up. Tesla sends back a quick ACK to confirm, and boom, the call starts. It's a nice, clean digital handshake.
But if that handshake isn't encrypted, an attacker can pull off what's called a man-in-the-middle attack. They can sneak in, grab that initial invite, and wedge themselves right into the middle of your call. And from there, they can just sit back and listen to everything, record it all, or even change the messages to redirect or completely hijack the call. And the scary part is, you and the other person would have no idea. Then you've got the brute force method, a denial of service, or DOS attack. The goal here isn't to be sneaky. It's all about just breaking things. The attacker just hammers the VoIP server with a flood of junk traffic until it's totally overwhelmed. It can't handle any real calls, and just like that, a company's entire phone system is down. And this, right here, this is what that flood actually looks like at the network level. This is a packet capture showing a server getting just pummeled with invite request after invite request. It's like a digital siege. The server gets so busy trying to handle all of this nonsense that it can't let any of the legitimate calls through. And finally, you have the really sneaky stuff, the attacks built around deception and fraud. This includes things like faking a caller ID so it looks like your bank is calling, or phishing, which is just phishing over the phone, trying to trick you into giving up passwords or credit card numbers. And then there's toll fraud, where crooks hijack a company's phone system to make tons of expensive international calls, leaving the company with a massive bill.
Okay, so the threats are definitely real. The good news is we know how to fight back. So let's talk about building a digital fortress around your conversations, because there are some powerful tools out there designed to stop exactly these kinds of attacks. The best way to think about VoIP security is like a three-person team working together. First, you've got SIP, the traffic cop we saw earlier, who sets up the call. But to do its job safely, it needs a bodyguard. That's TLS, which encrypts all the setup info. Then, once the call is connected, the third player, SRTP, jumps in and encrypts the actual audio of your conversation.
Honestly, the difference this makes is just night and day. Without encryption, everything's out in the open. With it, TLS protects the setup and SRTP protects the conversation. But here's the key, you absolutely need both.
Just encrypting the audio but not the setup is like locking your valuables in a safe and then mailing the key in a clear, unsealed envelope. It kind of defeats the whole purpose.
Which, of course, brings us all the way back to our mystery. Why would a provider tell someone not to use this stuff? Well, the answer is basically history. See, in the early days, encryption took a little more processing power, and that could sometimes add a tiny bit of lag to calls. Plus, you had compatibility problems getting different systems to talk to each other. So for some providers, it just wasn't a priority to build out really solid encryption support.
Right, but that advice is seriously outdated now. Any modern system can handle encryption just fine. So let's wrap this up with a practical playbook, real, actionable steps you can take to make sure your VoIP calls are actually locked down and secure.
All right, on the tech side of things, it starts with good network basics. That means a firewall at the edge, of course, always keeping your firmware updated to patch any known security holes. And this is the big one. You have to confirm that your provider actually supports and turns on both TLS and SRTP. For businesses, things like intrusion prevention systems add another great layer. And hey, don't forget the simple stuff, like actually locking the door to your server closet.
But tech is only half the battle, right? The human element is every bit as critical. This means basics, like using strong passwords and turning on two-factor authentication. It means teaching people how to spot those phishing scams. It also means taking a look at your call logs every now and then to see if there's anything weird, like a bunch of calls at 3 a.m. to a country you've never heard of. And here's a really simple one. If you don't make international calls, just turn that feature off.
And you know, this really gets to the heart of it. Your employees, your users, they aren't just potential weak links in the chain. They are your first and best line of defense. A user who knows how to spot a scam or notices something just feels off is an incredible security asset. Good education literally turns a potential vulnerability into a real strength.
So when you boil it all down, there's no single magic bullet for VoIP security. It's all about creating layers of defense. It's a true partnership between having the right technology, like TLS and SRTP, running in the background, and having smart, educated users who practice good security habits. If you have one without the other, you're leaving a pretty big hole in your defense.
So that leaves us with one final thought, and it's really for you. We've walked through the risks, and we've laid out the solutions. The only question left is, are you actually protected? So I'd encourage you to take a hard look at your own phone system, because in this digital age, just assuming your calls are private isn't just being optimistic, it's a vulnerability waiting to be exploited.